Am I the a-hole for not pulling my son from an IEP? It seems like he doesn't benefit from it as he could thrive at school without any accommodations, and it seemed to do more harm than good. Even though my 43 male, so this is dad, son, 13 male, was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at the age of 3 due to the fact that he didn't speak until 3.5 years old. However, by the middle of kindergarten, when my wife and I pulled out my son from special ed to a mainstream homeroom, his behavior started to increase. By third grade, my son was so good in math that he was placed in advanced math, where he joins a fourth grade classroom, and he loved that class. He was the only third grade student, and he seemed to be very happy getting straight A's in that class as well as other classes, even though he is slightly weaker in English and PE and only getting a B to A minus, which increased from a C plus to B minus since first grade. He has nonetheless thrived without needing any support. He has even won awards, both at the school and the regional level. However, throughout most of his elementary school and even middle school, he was on an IEP because the school forced us to put him on an IEP. Okay, you can't force someone to sign consent for an IEP. Even though it might have helped him during the very early years, it seemed like during much of elementary, it didn't benefit him at all and instead made his self-esteem worse. At his elementary school, it seems like students with IEPs have far more severe autism, are less academically adept, and have a lot of behavioral issues. I really want to know where this is going. In fact, between fourth to sixth grade, when my son was in elementary school, due to the fact that he received an A in conduct and effort in every class for every quarter, he gets to hang out with the, quote, great gators, unquote, at the cafeteria for some ice cream, and after getting an A in conduct slash effort consistently for 4 quarters every year, he and his top classmates at the school would be sent to a pizza store to eat some pizza. He really hates the IEP, and he saw no benefit. He wanted to pull us from the wanted us to pull him from the IEP. In fact, due to the fact that he had an IEP, when we moved to a new town, my son was put in a special ed homeroom, escorted by an aide and other SPED students, and my son's self-esteem went down and his behavior actually changed upon moving there. He was even put in remedial classes like English and math despite being in advanced in math. Even though the middle school in the new town did put him in mainstream math, they refused to let him in advanced math despite receiving an A year prior in sixth grade math, 2021. He hated the new school and demanded us pull him out of school. In fact, he is the only high achiever in the special ed homeroom, 10 students ranging from 6th to 8th, and the rest have learning disabilities and far more severe autism. So, once we pulled him out of school early last year, after 1 month, he started online school, middle of 6th, where he studied on his own pace while preparing for high school. In fact, due to the fact this school is self-paced, he finished a grade in about half the time, like 4 instead of 8/9. Okay, I'm editing this as I go, kind of, because the grammar is throwing me off. He also saw Lunch Bunch as not benefiting him. Lunch Bunch is kind of like a social group that some schools implement for autism. Is not benefiting him as he is essentially singled out with students with behavioral issues and more severe autism, and he kind of feels sad being there. Also, he doesn't really learn about anything there. Did they go to a meeting, the parents, and discuss this with the IEP team? Has he had an evaluation? I'm just curious. Okay, number one, I should be judged on whether or not keeping him in the IEP actually did more harm than good. It seems like my son thrived at school without needing really any support, and he felt like the IEP essentially labeled him as special needs, and during middle school, it made him the outcast along with other students with more severe disabilities or behavioral issues. He even thrived more in advanced classes, by the way. In third grade, my son's fourth grade math teacher wanted him in the science and social studies class with her. In September and the early half of October 2019, even though he thrived in science and the social studies class. The principal and third grade teacher did not authorize the move, and it made my son kind of mad at them because we did see that he got A's even when he was put in the fourth grade, and it seemed like his self esteem was very good when put in challenging classes and to be with other intelligent students. Number two, I might be the a hole because even though I don't think there is a way to remove him from the IEP, as the school essentially forced him into the IEP, and there is nothing my wife and I could do, I felt like the IEP has done some harm, like inappropriately underestimated his abilities, and it even put him in special education during middle school that doesn't solve his underlying issues, and it caused major changes to his brain, where he is now meeting the school psychologist to vent about issues of middle school life. After middle school, when he attended an online school of his choosing, he could finish the second half of sixth grade between February and April, seventh grade algebra between April and August, eighth grade math between October and mid-January, and now he is halfway into the ninth grade pre-calculus and is taking classes at local community college to get credits transferred to a private high school he will attend this fall. Okay, that's all that the dad has to say. I can tell instantly that there's not a lot of communication going on between the parents and the school, and that there isn't an understanding. At least I can only get the parent's perspective, but the parent doesn't understand how the process works. At any point in time, a parent does not have to consent to the an IEP. So if you think your child needs an IEP, or if the school thinks your child needs an IEP, you can say, look, I don't think my kid needs an IEP. The school can then take you to due process to force, so to speak, an evaluation. But that still does not, so the evaluation can show that your kid needs an IEP and the team can determine that the kid needs an IEP. That still does not mean that you as a parent have to sign consent. Informed consent is required in every state before an IEP can be implemented. So the parents can say, look, that's great. You guys think he needs an IEP. We don't. We're not going to sign. So they were not forced into it. Now, but the fact that they think they were tells me that there's a communication or an understanding issue between the parents and school. Also, at any time during the life of the IEP, the parents can revoke consent. So they can pull the IEP, period. Every year they are required to have a meeting. And so the dad says nothing about going to these meetings and saying, look, there's nothing, my kid is doing well. It sounds like the kid does well academically, so I'm assuming that the IEP was for functional issues like social, emotional, behavioral. And I wonder if the parents understand that that's the crux of autism, is that there's social, emotional, behavioral issues for the child. I don't think that the dad is an a-hole. I would want him to fully understand what an IEP is for, though. The fact that the kid is now seeing a psychologist because of some of the issues with middle school tells me that maybe they could have used the IEP for more functional things. And then the school putting the kid in, automatically putting the kid in special education classes when he had advanced math, I don't understand why they would do that. So this is the type of thing that a letter that I would get, for instance, when a parent wants to hire me as an advocate, and I read through everything and it makes zero sense to me. And I hate to say it about you parents, but more often than not, I find that the parent doesn't understand what the school has been saying all along. Now, in this situation, I wouldn't see a school putting a kid in a special education class for math or for the other classes if he has a history of doing well. But a lot of times there's a lack of communication. I think that's what the issue is here. I would say not the a-hole. However, I'm curious what you guys think.